Talia Ram, welcome to the Biohacking Secret Show.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony. So excited to be here, and hopefully we can shed some light on lighting.
We're starting off with the puns already. I like it. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about all things light therapy, maximizing sleep quality, the importance of our circadian biology and how to optimize that with light therapy and other cool biohacks. But for our listeners who might not be familiar with your work, maybe you could give us your origin story, your background, and how you got so deep into this stuff.
Sure. Well, I guess we'll start. I am the daughter of the founders of a company called LumiRam. And so we've been around for a very long time, 1959 actually in Europe, but we came to the States in 1978, and we're best known for a brand of light bulbs called Chromaluxe. So we're the originator of a special technology using neodymium, which is an earth element in our light bulbs. So we'll get into all the benefits that holds, how it makes things look different. Yeah, so I'm the daughter's founder, or the daughter of the founders, Corinne and Jacques Ram. And, I guess we'll get into the technology, but the story is kind of interesting. So this element was used specifically by doctors in Scandinavia and Finland, to be specific. And skin doctors were actually using neodymium, a very similar light source, to more accurately detect any abnormalities in their patient's skin. So, under this light, colors and contrast are much, much better than any other type of light source. So very similar to natural daylight and what you get from under the sun, though slightly different. And again, we'll get into all of that. So people can actually see, if you look under the sun and you look at your skin, you can see your veins, right? You can see all the little differences in the skin texture, in the colors. You can see your pores, maybe your capillaries. So under this light, you could see it. It's like a magnifying glass. So essentially, they were so inspired. What would happen if you take that lighting and you bring it into the home? What would happen, right? Because it has such an extraordinary effect on colors and contrast. And, we always joke around, I guess it's quite serious, right? Lighting is a huge topic, but the lens that you view your world through, or rather the light that you view your world through, is, correlates to how you see everything. So light and your life, rather, is only as beautiful as the light that you view it through. If you've ever heard of the term, seeing life through rose-colored glasses, the Chromaluxe light bulb, if you take a look at it, it's, or I'll pull one up right here. I have all the light bulbs. So here's a frosted one. So you see it has like a nice lavender color. So that's the neodymium that's compounded into the glass. It's so beautiful. And the cool thing is, you can't see here, I'm actually under incandescent light bulbs right now as we speak. Under incandescent light bulbs, it will appear a lavender or purple color. Under fluorescent lighting and sometimes under daylight, it looks blue. So it actually changes colors. It's very cool of a compound, of an element. So yeah, so that's the Chromaluxe light bulb. That's the neodymium.
I'm very interested. It's beautiful. Yeah, it looks almost like a shiny purple lavender color, which is very unique. I've never seen that before. And I mean, we were talking before we hit record. So I mean, we've been sharing sort of the health risks associated with dirty lighting and blue light, and these energy efficient bulbs that so many people have in their homes and they're in stores and businesses. And like I'd mentioned to you, I've got red lights in my bedroom so that at night, nighttime, it helps kind of like maximize melatonin synthesis. And we use some Edison bulbs, like the old school ones that are a much gentler, like orange color, like the bright, offensive blue light that you see in so many homes. And I was like, well, is that the same thing as what you guys are doing and your bulbs? Maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of an idea. Like, the short answer, you said no. But for our listeners, maybe you can kind of explain like what differentiates like these Chromaluxe neodymium bulbs from like an Edison bulb, or even the red lights that I have in the bedroom.
Sure. And it's such a great question, and you realize, again, we'll get into it, like there's so much about lighting, and there's so many types of lighting. So what you're talking about with Edison bulbs is, I assume you mean the just general incandescent light bulb with the filament, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I know they make LEDs now that are supposed to mimic the look of Edison bulbs.
I don't.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so the incandescent is just a technology. It's a light technology, and we love them. We really love it, and we'll get into all the technologies in a bit. But we call it the analog light source. So, it's the essential light source. It's really what actually the sun is also an incandescent light source. So meaning it heats up the filament, and the hotter that it burns, the more light is produced. So that's the visible light. The red lights that you have, I'm assuming are infrared. Are they for the infrared, or they're just red color?
They're like zoo lights. So they usually make them for like
reptiles, right?
Lizards in my house.
It's funny. We have a whole full line of reptile lights too.
Really?
Yeah. I know. We have literally every light bulb under the sun.
That's cool.
But we're here to talk about Chromaluxe today. But we do have a bulb for the reptiles, the basking light.
Nice.
So that's what you're using, right? The red, the infrared. Yeah. So those they can be LED based, but you probably have the incandescent.
Yes.
And so yeah, again, it's the filament, and incandescents we'll get into everything about the light spectrum, but infrared is non-visible light that sits directly below the lower extremity of visible light, which is 760 nanometers, which is 700 to 760 is red light. So infrared is invisible, still has lots of great energy for us, right? For mitochondria, for energy, for our cells. And it sits directly below the visible red light. Yeah. So, that's what that is in terms of the technology. And our bulbs, so for example, this one that I was holding up, actually, I have a clear one. So you can see, this is a clear glass one. You can kind of still see the lavender. If you look closely inside, I'll bring it up to the camera. You can see the filament.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the filament, that's what makes it incandescent. So the technology is different, or the technology is the technology. So you can have an Edison bulb, produces a nice kind of amber, kind of yellowish light. And the cool thing about incandescence is that it is full spectrum, just out of the box. It's a full spectrum visible light spectrum. We'll get into what full spectrum means, because there are so many things on the internet that you can read about it. And there's multiple definitions, but yeah, so the visible spectrum is full, it's lush, it's beautiful. It has a CRI of around 99 to 100. CRI is color rendering index. So that means how accurately you can see colors in your environment when you compare it to natural daylight. So then what we did is basically the difference between this and a standard Edison incandescent bulb is the addition of the neodymium. So what it does is it actually absorbs some of the dulling components of the visible light spectrum, for example, yellow, and a little bit of the green. And it's really interesting because the human eye is most sensitive to the yellow spectrum, right? So since our eyes are so sensitive to that, you can actually absorb a little bit. So the neodymium absorbs a little bit. So it's almost like it's filtering the light. And by pulling that down, you still see it because our eyes are so sensitive to it, but it actually it saturates all the other colors. So by pulling yellow down, there's more room for the blues and the reds and the greens to come up. And that's specifically the reds and the blues. Our eyes are not super sensitive to. So that's the main, way that how this works. So really the main benefit you'll see is it enhances your environment just immediately. You turn it on and it's a night and day difference. It's really the colors come to life. They get saturated. I always like to use an example that photographers might appreciate, or, I hopefully anyone, tell me if this makes sense. But, if you ever use Photoshop or you work with editing software on anything, there's something for color contrast, and there's something for saturation, and something for luminance, or I think luminance it's called. Imagine you're pulling up the saturation, you're pulling up the luminance, and you're pulling up the contrast or the sharpening a little bit. And that's exactly what these bulbs do.
Okay, so they're like Photoshop for real life.
Exactly.
All right, this is making a little bit more sense. And just to kind of take a step back, because I think most of our listeners are familiar with some of the health ramifications and the melatonin suppression that takes place, the mitochondrial inhibition that can occur from, like, whether you want to call it dirty light or blue light or whatever. So when I'm hearing some of this, I guess to take a step back, incandescent versus LED, like, what are the benefits of one versus the other and why?
Yeah, great question. I always like to preface everything that light is a tool. Mm-hmm. So you use a specific tool according to whatever circumstance you're in and what you need your light to do. So LED is great for some things. It's from an energy efficiency standpoint, it's awesome. You can't beat it. And that's really why there was a huge push for it. Because it saves energy, and that's all well and good. But when we're having a discussion on light and health, and when it comes to light and health, there are some things that, you can have an LED that does infrared. I know there's so many on the marketplace now for red light LEDs and infrared LEDs, and that's awesome. Or I guess let's back up a little bit. So back to the tool part, right? Lighting is a tool. Visible light is just one part of the spectrum, right? We can talk a little bit if you want me to go into the larger electromagnetic spectrum.
Let's do it.
For your listeners. All right. Yeah. I always like to preface everything with a kind of, you have to have an understanding of where we're coming from and the wavelengths of light,
Yeah. We like to nerd out.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So light, as we know it, obviously electromagnetic spectrum, it's called. Sunlight produces all of the rays. So whether that's gamma rays, radio waves, UV, visible light, the three that we're really concerned with that reaches Earth's surface and that have such a hold on all biology, plant and animal life, and will really facilitate the conversation about health and light and how it fits into our lives as humans. Mm-hmm. There's three parts. The visible light, which is really just a narrow band on this electromagnetic spectrum. Mm-hmm. Visible light is all the colors of the rainbow.
Roy G. Biv.
Exactly. Roy G. Biv.
Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Exactly. Yes. And that all comprises white light. So we learn about this as young kids in school, right? Roy G. Biv, that comprises, you hold up a prism to light, you see all the different bands. So all of those bands have a specific wavelength and a corresponding energy. Mm-hmm. And then, so that's visible light. It's a very narrow little spectrum, and directly adjacent on the extremities, so either side, which is red light is one end, blue light or blue violet light on the other end, is ultraviolet. So ultraviolet, of course, is right next to the violet and blue light. And then we have infrared, which is directly underneath the red light.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of in a little nutshell where, the three parts that we're concerned about: UV, visible light, infrared.
So infrared is before the visible light spectrum, the Roy G. Biv. So if we're picturing like a continuum here, all the way on the left side, you've got infrared, and that's like what people are using in their infrared saunas these days. The folks that have like a clear light or a sunlight and whatever. Then you get into the visible light spectrum. That's your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And then on the other side of that, you have UV light, which is ultraviolet. And the sun produces all of these, and they're what are responsible for plant and animal life and photosynthesis and mitochondrial energy production to a certain degree that is facilitated through the absorption of light from the sun and the production of ATP via like the electron transport chain and stuff like that. And did that kind of sum it up?
You got it perfectly. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. And it depends, because you said it the way it should be, right? You have infrared, like on the left. If we're reading left to right, infrared, red light starts the visible light chain. It ends at blue light, violet light, and then we have ultraviolet.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the electromagnetic spectrum. And I'll also kind of a side note, but this is a question that we get all the time, so it might be helpful for listeners. There really are two pathways that we absorb light through. And what we're talking about today is through the eyes, through the retina specifically, and through the hypothalamus in the brain. We don't use light therapy for UV or vitamin D production purposes. That's that's through the skin. Light therapy, for it to work and for light to really take effect, it needs to hit the eyes. So your eyes have to be open. We don't, a lot of people will say, well, do full spectrum light bulbs can I lay under them and get UV, and can I get vitamin D? And the answer is no.
Okay.
Go outside for that. Or I know they have specialized units for that. And tanning beds, of course.
Yeah.
Those are specific bulbs. That's not what this is.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And then now the other follow-up question was, so the neodymium, which sounds like something from like X-Men.
I know, it's pretty cool.
every night he bathes in neodymium. The neodymium, so that in the glass filters out some of the yellow, and then it raises up the quantities of like the red and the blue. And my question there is, so people have been like almost trained in the biohacking community that like blue light equals bad. And so when you're saying this is like pulling up levels of the blue, maybe you could explain that to the people that are like, oh no, I don't want more blue light. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
I know. I always like saying this and seeing people's reactions, because blue light and the blue color wavelengths are the same, but they're different. So when we're talking blue in terms of blue color wavelengths, again, we'll get into the whole like biology and how things actually are absorbed through the eyes. That's just a part of the visible light spectrum. But when we're talking about the color of an object, I don't have anything here to pull up, but my pen. This blue, I can see it in a more saturated way, but that doesn't mean that this is blue light reaching my eyes. Does that make sense? It's just the color of the object that's being reflected and absorbed. So by pulling down the yellow, it's increasing the ability to see this blue, but that doesn't mean that there's an increase in blue light wavelengths reaching my eyes and causing any suppression of melatonin in my system.
Okay. And
so they are also different. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I would have to imagine that part of the problem with dirty light or blue light is that it doesn't exist in these like commercial bulbs in the same full spectrum capacity. So like the red, and all these other colors, like they exist in nature together. Whereas when you try to get extremely energy efficient with a lot of the bulbs that people put in their homes, it no longer has that full spectrum makeup, I guess. And so that the quote unquote blue isn't balanced and therefore can have different biological effects than perhaps even the same quantity of blue would have if it were balanced in a full spectrum bulb or full spectrum sunlight. Is that accurate, or am I talking out of my bum?
No, it's a good point. I would say that parts of it are accurate. And I will also say, though, the concept of blue light from, blue light isn't bad. I guess we'll start there. Blue light is not inherently bad. We need it. I guess this could be a good time to kind of segue into the whole thing of how we absorb light. And something specifically called melanopsin, which is a photopigment in our eyes. So our eyes, we have the rods, we have our cones, right? Those are the photoreceptors that allow us to see. There's also something else that's non-visual based, which are intrinsically photosensitive.
Retinal ganglion cells.
Yes. You know them.
Yeah. I'm a dork. That's what I do.
Yes. So that's all. So what do? Even in individuals who are blind that can't see, they can still have a circadian rhythm and they can still detect light in their environment, because these aren't image forming photoreceptors. All they do, their sole job really, is to detect light in the environment. So there's a pigment within those cells that's called melanopsin, which I'll let you guess what it refers to. A melatonin, right? And so the blue light, this is where it comes into play. Melanopsin is sensitive only at around, the 500 nanometer range, which if we look on the spectrum of light, a visible light, 500 is kind of where blue starts, or really, if we want to get technical, it's about 480 nanometers. So a little bit below 500. So melanopsin, this pigment, is really sensitive to that. And what it does is it basically, light comes into your eyes. It's a direct input to your hypothalamus, which is going to let the pineal gland know, whether or not we're suppressing melatonin, whether it's time for, it's time for bed. I'm sure your listeners know melatonin and its role, right?
Yeah, we'll call it the sleep hormone to overly simplify what it does, but it also very
the sleepy
important.
Hormone.
The sleepy hormone, yeah. Don't sleep on melatonin, guys. But it also plays a huge role in our immune health and so many different aspects of our biology.
Yes, and so that's why light. Not only does we know it from the blue light and the kind of inducing or not allowing us to sleep, but like you just said, it has so many more implications on our larger health and well-being, beyond just that.
Yeah, I've also seen some pretty exciting evidence suggesting like these magnetoreceptors that are in sea turtles and certain migratory birds, that we may also have those, and one of those magnetoreceptors may be melanopsin, where we're actually able to pick up on the magnetic effect, the Schumann resonance of the Earth through different cells in our bodies, one of which perhaps could be like melanopsin and some other things like that.
I had not heard of that, but I do know about Schumann, and I have in my other life, I'm very much into sound. I'm an audiophile. So I'm very much into the frequencies of light and the frequencies of sound, and they're very much the same. And I always say, if audio, if you know anything about audio, you want to have a full sound. They're waves, right? Same thing with light. You want to have the full spectrum of sound and light.
Okay, so this is making sense. So these melanopsin photoreceptors in our eyes, they're most sensitive in kind of the blue range, 480 to 500 nanometers. They signal to our hypothalamus, our part of our brain, through the eyes, which really is the brain as well. It's the only part of the brain that's actually exposed to the outside world. Yes. And based on these light cues from our external environment, our hormonal systems in our body, like melatonin and cortisol, and these two pathways that are inverses of one another, they are getting cues and kind of tuning the clocks in our cells, if you will, to say, okay, it's lots of sunlight, lots of blue light in this full spectrum sunlight in the 480 to 500 range, and then everything else. It's morning, time to get up, time to be more alert. Yes. Let's suppress melatonin. Let's increase cortisol. This is what's going to get you going in the morning. And part of our junk light, some of the consequences of having so much junk light in our lives through all the screens that we stare at, our phones, our computers, our televisions, is that so many people are waking up in the morning and they feel like they've got hit by a truck, or they're exhausted. They can't get out of bed because their melatonin and their cortisol aren't signaling properly, because they're not getting the cues that are necessary for our biology to tune the internal 100%. Cellular clocks that we possess.
Entrainment.
Entrainment.
It's called, entrainment of the circadian rhythm. So light is it controls us. I like to say light controls us. And as such, you should really use light, to make it work for you. So the cortisol and melatonin, they really should be nice bell curves, right? So we should have, as melatonin is rising in the evening, cortisol should be dipping down, and the opposite. In the morning, cortisol should be rising, melatonin should be dipping. I know a lot of people, there was a huge push for melatonin supplements to help, aid in sleep. And a lot of people take that, but I would argue that before you even try that, why not fix your lighting? And by fixing it, we'll get into what that means, but don't use, and the blue light in our devices has become kind of common. It's a common theme now. We even seen I know my iPhone, for example, it has a filter specifically for blue light, My computer has something too. I used to use a software, but now it's specifically just ingrained in the computer that you can time the color temperature and how warm and how cool you'll have it throughout the day. So the cool thing is,
do you use Iris
that while blue light has become more, common in our day-to-day lives and what we talk about, we should also be talking about the brightness of our light. So just eliminating blue light in the evening, right? Turning off our devices or having a filter on them. So it's only the warmer spectrum coming through the screen rather than the cool blue light. You should also think about how bright your environment is, because that's also a big indicator of whether or not we're going to be suppressing melatonin. So I personally like to use incandescent light bulbs in the evening, and that's because they naturally have more red light and less blue light in their spectrum. We haven't really yet talked about color temperature, but very simply, color temperature is just an indication of how white a light source appears. So something called warm white light is going to have more red in its visible light spectrum than blue. And then the opposite is true. So we have cool white or daylight white light, it can be known as. And that's going to be whiter light. So it almost looks more blue. And of course, it has more blue in its spectrum. So it just skews more towards the blue.
Okay.
So those, and then of course we have something called natural white, but that's kind of right in between the warm white, the natural white, and then the cool white, which is cooler. And throughout the day, I guess I'll mention sunlight varies, right? In the dawn and dusk, it's warmer. It's more amber appearing. It's more red appearing. So again, that just means that it has more red wavelengths that are reaching us than blue. At midday or noon, we have a kind of more white, more blue appearing light, which makes sense because we want to be more alert during the day and in the early morning. So that light during the daytime is going to have more blue wavelengths or some more blue color wavelengths. So that's a little bit about color temperature very quickly. And then, so I use the incandescents. We'll get back to kind of what I use. I know there's something called circadian lighting or smart lighting that you can control through your phone. You can control through a remote control.
I'm a big believer that anything that comes with the name
changes color throughout the day. We don't produce that, and I'm not really too keen on that idea when it comes to lighting because I like to keep things very simple. I'm very old-fashioned when it comes to lighting, and I don't like to have my lighting connected to devices. I think lighting is something that's a natural, simple phenomena, and I like to keep it like that. So that being said, I will actually have different fixtures outfitted with specific light bulbs according to what I think I'll be doing in that room. So for example, in my bedroom, I have, my bedside table lamp, and I have a 25 watt, so a low watt incandescent bulb in there. Actually, it's pretty cool. I'll pull it up right here. I have all my bulbs right here. It actually looks like a little candle. So it's almost reminiscent, reminds you of a candle. So that's also an indication of how much light you want in your environment at night. You want no more than like a candle glow. So you can either put your lights on a dimmer. I know that sometimes, or maybe your audience isn't too into the idea of dimming just because of the potential of EMFs.
I can't increase EMFs.
Especially on lower quality dimmers. So you can use a lower wattage incandescent. So like I had mentioned briefly, this one's only 25 watts and it's going to be just enough light to illuminate, the bedside. If you want to read before bed, it's perfect.
Cool. Yeah. This is making a lot of sense. Just to kind of take a couple steps back and give some resources for people. Like when you're filtering out your computer light, are you using like Iris, a program like that, to kind of help manage that? That's what I use personally. And I'm very much enjoying some of these hacks for like the different types of bulbs that you want to use, like going with a lower wattage bulb, like a 25 watt incandescent with the neodymium neodymium. I think I said it wrong. Neodymium that you guys produce in the bedroom. so that you can read, but it more closely mimics like natural candle light. I think that's a fantastic recommendation. What else? What are some of the other things that we can do to make light work for us? Did we lose audio? Are you able to hear me? Mic check. Hello, hello. Hello there.
I'm not sure what happened.
Here, now we got two windows open. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened either. It seems like we got frozen or something.
Okay, let me close the other. Okay. Are we good now?
I think so. I think everything's still recording. It was like frozen, and I was kind of trying to make the best of it. And I was like, I think this is, I was still hearing you, but then I would like occasionally say like, oh, are you using Iris to like filter out the light on your computer? And then I was like, I don't think she heard me.
No, You were completely gone. In fact, it showed that you weren't even on anymore.
I don't know. It must be
so
internet.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was showing yours like mine's fully uploaded, but then it was showing yours at like 0% uploaded or like 30% uploaded, which is rare. So, I think we're still good. It seems like it's back working now, I hope. I made a note.
I think you might have to splice the recording.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because I think this is a separate session.
Yeah. No, that's all good. I'll send it for editing and make sure that, hey, around the 30-minute mark, we started having some issues. So can you kind of just splice the recordings together? So, how about we'll do this? Okay. All right, ready? I'll kind of pick up with a question just like as a recap, and then we'll continue from where you were.
Okay.
All right. So I want to kind of make sure that we're touching on some resources and that everyone is understanding everything that everyone's picking up what you're putting down. So you filter out some of the light on your devices. I use a program called Iris on my computer that lets you kind of do that. And then I've got like different settings on my phone where I'll also, go more towards a red at night where you can set your phone up where you just like triple click it and like it goes into like red mode.
I have that on my phone.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So I do that as well. And then what you're also saying is, so there are ways to like really make light work for us via light therapy. So you were talking about using like a low watt, 25 watt incandescent bulb that almost is like candle light for your bedside nightstand and really biohacking the brightness of your lighting, not just the spectrums but the brightness via a lower wattage. What are some other ways that we can biohack brightness, color temperature, and really make light work for us?
Totally. So just like at night when we need to have dimmer light that's not blue, so incandescence perfectly into there. If you use LEDs, it's probably going to be more of a red LED. I know they make those too. Mm-hmm. The opposite holds true in the daytime. So the first thing that should really happen in the morning, part of your morning routine, it all comes down to routines, right? Mm-hmm. In the morning, you want that white light, you want that blue light. So while I'm not saying, like a vampire and you open up the lights and it's like shining in your eyes, it's super white and blinding, that's might not be the best thing immediately when you wake up. But, drink some water, have some coffee if you have coffee, head outside, no sunglasses, no sunscreen, get light on your body, most importantly, in your eyes.
I love that.
It's got to go in your eyes.
I do that just about every morning. It's like 10 minutes. I'll just take a chair on our deck or like in the grass, face it toward the sun and just look towards the sun. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about staring at the sun or anything like that.
Don't look at the sun. Listeners, please don't look at the sun.
Yeah, just let it into your eyes, send those signals, get a nice little cortisol spike, get that nice melatonin suppression, which will result in a greater melatonin release at night. And then, in as little as 5 or 10 minutes, it has a massive effect on not just regulating our circadian biology, but also like the dopamine that is produced by our brain via light interacting with the amino acid tyrosine in the eyes, and a lot of cool things that take place. You'll find you have more energy, better cognitive performance throughout the day, etc. And then I'm going to kind of turn it back over to you, and you can share some of the ways that we want to hack our indoor lighting throughout the day to further optimize our biology and performance and sleep.
Totally. Yeah. And before we get into the indoor lighting, I guess this kind of is part of it. Light therapy and light therapy units. So you might have seen them as light pads that use LEDs, or, I mean, we also have light therapy boxes that use bright fluorescence, white fluorescence.
Okay.
I'm sure people kind of have heard of light therapy for something called SAD, or seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah. For people
Right?
that
You're
get
familiar
depressed
with
in the
that.
wintertime, or like it affects their mood because they're not getting enough
but
sun.
this is touching on, yeah, exactly. And that touches, the reason I'm mentioning is because you touched on, dopamine and just kind of our mood and how it's related to lighting and how that affects, or how it's affected by our lighting. So in the morning, right, how you mentioned you go outside, you get a nice blast of light in your eyes, and that should be amongst the first things you do in the beginning of your day. You can also use light therapy. I mean, traditionally it's used in the wintertime or the darker months because you don't get enough sunlight, but you can also use it throughout the year in the morning for the very same reason. Let's say it's too cloudy of a day. Even if it's cloudy, you're still getting many lux. Lux is just how bright light is. You're still getting a lot of brightness and light. But let's say you don't really feel the effects. You want more. You want like a bigger glass, a bigger cup of coffee sort of deal. You can use a light therapy unit for that reason. So I actually, in my office, I have my coffee, I have my computer, and then I have my light therapy pad right next to me. And I turn it on for 20 minutes in the morning, as I'm kind of starting my day. And it has an awesome, energizing effect.
Interesting. And so are these like light therapy pads and the different light bulbs that we're talking about, are those all available at healthlighting.com?
They are.
They are.
Yes.
And we've got a biohacking secrets discount code for you guys if that saves you like 15%. So as you guys are listening to this, I mean, first and foremost, if you're getting value, like share this episode up, to your Instagram stories and on social media. We really appreciate that. That's what allows us to put this stuff out for free. And if you decide you want to pick up some of these different products for making light, go to work for you and optimizing your biology and optimizing your sleep, you can go to healthlighting.com and then enter discount code biohacking secrets at checkout to save yourself 15%. Okay, beautiful. I just wanted to mention that. And
I'll mention that most people, we have every sort of light bulb on there. But I think most of your listeners would be interested into the Chromaluxe incandescent and Chromaluxe enhanced collections. And we'll talk about what that means. I mean, incandescent is incandescent, but the enhanced is our halogen incandescent line.
Okay.
Which is, halogen. We'll get into the technologies, but halogen is just an enhanced version of incandescent light.
Enhanced in what capacity?
Enhanced in that it's brighter and it's a little bit wider. So it's perfect for daytime usage. It's a little bit wider of a color temperature.
Okay.
So, incandescents fall around, the general incandescents are 2700 Kelvin, 3000 Kelvin. And then, ours are a little bit wider just because of the type of filament we use. It burns a little bit wider. So it's a little bit more beautiful. And of course the glass we use, and then halogen. So the enhanced version, Chromaluxe enhanced, it's 4200 Kelvin. So that means it's whiter light. You can still use it at night, but I would dim them, definitely dim them. And that comes into the conversation of dimming lights at night and that whole thing. If you don't want to dim, use low wattage,
Okay.
There's so many options.
This makes sense. And,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So like the key, like what are the key couple products that someone would really want to explore? You mentioned that light therapy pad. I think that sounds awesome. I'd love to have one of those on my desk and, run that for 20 minutes when I'm first getting the day started. The Chromaluxe enhanced sounds really cool for daytime use. And like brighter environments, and then going with a lower wattage Chromaluxe at night seems like that could be a pretty good fit. Are those kind of like the core products that you think our audience would be interested in?
Totally. Yeah. And we haven't really even got into lighting design yet.
Yeah. Let's do that.
So, okay. So lighting design, and then we'll kind of put the products in where they fit in. So again, I like to use the analogy of a painting. So if you have an empty canvas, a blank canvas, and you're going to start painting, the first layer that you put down is your background. It's not, in the forefront. It's not totally in your face. It just sets the tone of what is going to happen.
Okay.
Same thing in light. We have the background of light, which is called ambient light or general light. So typically, in homes, we find this or we use fixtures of recessed hi-hats, the type of flood bulb. I'll pick one up right here that I have. Like I mentioned, I have all my bulbs here so you can see. It's important to know because you can't use a specific one light bulb in a fixture. You really have to have the specific shape. So this is a flood bulb.
Okay.
Right? This is one of our flood bulbs. Again, it's frosted. It uses our glass. So that's why it's kind of purple appearing. And this you put into a recessed fixture. The general size, so this is an R30 bulb, and that is usually for about a 5-inch diameter recessed can in your ceiling. So again, that's the first general layer. That's the background layer of light. It's the fill light. Okay. Then the second is the midground, right? Again, with the painting analogy, the midground.
Yeah.
So we start putting in some elements. That is in lighting what we call accent lighting. So accent lighting, again, you can use little flood lamps. We have smaller ones. Here's a smaller version.
Okay.
Right? It goes even smaller than this. This is called R25. There's something called an R20 that is even smaller. So track lighting, you can put those in there and you can kind of like tilt them to highlight architectural elements in a house. So, whether you have nice moldings or you want to highlight artwork, whatever it is, that's the midground.
Okay.
And then the last portion, the very important thing that's in your foreground on a painting, that's what we call, or what I call, again, this is my analogy. You're not going to find this elsewhere. So if it makes no sense, I mean, I really hope it does. I'm painting the picture for you right now. So the foreground is what we call task lighting. So task lighting is going to be, you have a desk lamp, you have a floor lamp on your desk, on the floor next to your couch as you're reading, on your desk as you're working, writing, whatever you're doing during the day. That's your task lighting, and that's illuminating the space directly next to you. And this is a cool lighting hack that I'll give your listeners, that I give our clients all the time. We have so many people that are calling in interested about incandescent lighting, as I'm sure you can imagine. And a lot of people are like, I want to use incandescent lighting, yet I am afraid of wasting a bunch of energy. And again, I would say, well, what is it, energy wasted? I mean, that energy is really just thermal energy and infrared, which is very useful for us. So I would say it's not wasted, but that's another conversation. So people are concerned about this, they take up a lot of wattage. So what can you do? How do you use incandescence in this context? Well, you can use a mixture of light, and I always say, again, going back to earlier, we had mentioned, light is a tool, make it work for you. So if you want energy efficiency, you're going to have to use LED. There are good quality LEDs. We make a Chromaluxe version of the LED. I don't have one on my desk right now, but it's essentially, it uses LED diodes, but it's using the glass. This is an incandescent, but so we do make them. Chromaluxe does make that. So you can use, especially in your hi-hats, let's say you have recessed hi-hats, you can use, a nice LED in there. It's your fill light. It's your ambient light. It's not directly touching you, or your eyes. A lot of people are concerned about macular degeneration. Again, if, for our elderly population, for those that have macular degeneration, and it's active, or people with vision problems, sure, I don't recommend to use the LED. Absolutely. But for the general person, I don't really see a big problem with it. Use them in your overhead. And then the task lighting, right? This is the hack. Use incandescents and use halogens, because that is where it really works as a light vitamin. I call it a light vitamin. You wouldn't be using, and you shouldn't be working for 8 hours in one shift. You have to get up. You have to move around. You shouldn't be sitting for those full 8 hours, and you wouldn't have your light on for those full 8 hours. So it's a perfect opportunity to really kind of turn on your light, get some work done, 45 minutes, 1 hour, however, you do your work and the increments that you do them in, and then turn your light off. Go do something else, come back, turn it on. Use it as a vitamin in short little bursts. and you're getting all those cool benefits, especially the Chromaluxe bulb. I mean, you can't really see. I don't have a desk lamp on, but it's on my overheads right now. I'm not going to tilt the camera because that will be too glaring. But they have this really satisfying effect on just pretty much everything. I mean, the colors are more enhanced, but the contrast, and that's where it's important. We haven't even yet talked about eyes from the perspective of what light is good for your eyes, safe for your eyes. But when you're working, if you're staring at a screen all day, it's good to kind of, look away. There's the 20-20-20 rule I think I've read about, every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That's totally important for the eyes. Have you heard of that?
No, I like it though.
No. Yeah, no, it's great. 20-20-20. It's easy to remember. But also, yeah, I mean, I like to use incandescence when I work because it has that kind of crispening effect on text. So if I'm writing, and I write a lot, it really softens the environment and it's not as glaring on the eyes. So the eyes can actually relax a little bit.
It's making a lot of sense.
So that's kind of like good. I hope so. There's so many components, right?
Right. And
so many components.
And almost applying this like minimum effective dose principle that like Tim Ferriss helped popularize, but with lighting, where if you don't need the light, don't have it on. But when you do have it on, have the right type of light on, and that depends on the time of day and what task you're doing, how close you are to bedtime, etc. If you're super concerned about energy efficiency, you could get these, LED variations of like the Chromaluxe bulbs that you guys make that still have the neodymium. But I mean, me personally, I'm not a big fan of LED, and I'd want to go with the incandescent and the halogen, and then maybe something like a light therapy pad like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and so I mean that segues perfectly to products that I would recommend that your listeners can get started with. If you're not into the LED, like Anthony just said, the halogen and the incandescent. So overhead, you can, and I can give you links, Anthony, so you can put this in the show notes if you want, specific links to these products. R30, like I had mentioned, is the most popular type of flood lamp that you would use in your recessed ceiling fixtures. And so that is going to be the halogen version. So that's going to be perfect for daytime. You can use it in the nighttime if you dim it. I also have, this is the R25 incandescent 60 watt. I put this above my bed. I have recessed lights right above my bed. And these I use at night. It's perfect. It's only 60 watts. It's a beautiful kind of almost reddish appearing light. Not red. You'd have to kind of see it to understand what I mean. But people describe Chromaluxe light as kind of having a rosy hue or like a rosy undertone to everything. So it's white light with a rosy undertone. This one is a great one, so we can link to that. And then just for your general, my little candle bulb, I highly recommend this one for bedtime. Little 25 watt incandescent for reading. And then just general, whatever. Yeah, yes, this is a B10 type bulb. So it's like a chandelier type bulb, but with a regular standard E26 medium screw base.
Okay.
So that's the general base for like a normal light bulb.
Okay.
And then just regular A type, those pear shaped light bulbs. They come in clear and frosted glass, and I can kind of tell you the difference and what I recommend.
Okay.
So first and foremost, check the max wattage of your fixture. So take out the light bulb and look at the fixture. It should be printed, this max wattage 100 watt is kind of what I see the most, 75 watts sometimes. And then it says A type or A19 or A21. That's just the shape of the bulb. Again, it's the general pear-shaped bulb. So go by the max wattage that your fixture can accommodate and then go from there. So let's say it's max 100 watt. You can use a 100 watt incandescent if you want something a little bit warmer. You can use, we have a 72 watt enhanced, which is the halogen. And then you can choose clear or frosted glass, side-by-side comparison.
Okay.
So when you have a light shade, you can get away with the clear glass. It's just going to be a little bit more luminous.
Okay.
The frosted glass is great also in shades, but it's going to be a little bit less light. And if ever the light is in your line of sight, you don't want it to kind of glare in your eyes. You don't want to see the filament burning, and in the clear, you would see the filament in your, directly shining.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really direct preference. If you have any sensitivity in your eyes, definitely use the frosted. If you're using a shaded lamp, the clear is a beautiful option as well.
Okay, cool. So basically use the clear when you got a lamp shade. That's going to help soften it and absorb some of that light and filter it out. And then, but most of the time, the frosted is the way to go.
Frosted is just the all-around general light. That's what I call it.
Okay.
And clear is kind of the more ambient, moody light, I guess, but it's more luminous.
Yeah, I dig it. And then they're all at healthlighting.com. Discount code Biohacking Secrets for 15% off. All right, I'm digging this. This is helpful. And now, like, out of curiosity, so the setup that I mentioned that I have here, where I've just kind of like the old traditional Edison bulbs where you see the filament and it almost looks like lights from 75 or 100 years ago. And then I have, the red lizard ones at night. Like, what would be the advantages of going with more of a setup like we're describing here, with like the frosted bulbs that have the neodymium and kind of like moving Chromaluxe in to my home environment and office?
Well, do you like to see things in a more colorful way?
I think so.
Yeah. So that's the big advantage right there. That's the simplest way to put it. Incorporate everything you have, the infrared and everything you already use. And then, if you've never used Chromaluxe, it's a lot of people have never heard of it, but they find us because of, health and light and all these articles that I've written online, and they find us and then they use it and they're like, wow, this actually does make a difference, especially on eyes and then on colors. Everything just looks more beautiful. That's the simplest way you can put it, but the effect on colors, standard lighting isn't really tuned to show colors in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'll use the painting analogy again. I don't know why. Maybe I want to start painting, but you have a canvas, you have some colors on your canvas, and you look at it indoors. It's not going to look the same as if you do it outside and you look outside under natural daylight.
Right.
That's why you see a lot of painters, they'll work outside for that very reason. And so that's something called color rendering index, or CRI, that comes into play, which we briefly touched on, but that's really just every color in visible light and how you can really replicate those colors naturally. So incandescent lighting, though it has a CRI of 100 or 99, so it's nearly perfect, it still doesn't accurately show colors. And that's kind of where Chromaluxe came into play. The whole purpose was that yellows, reds, blues, and again, blue, when I say blue, I'm not talking blue light that hits your retina and doesn't make you sleepy at night. I'm talking blue in an object that's reflected, the color that you see.
Got it.
Separate thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to really boost the vibrancy of everything, you don't get that with a normal incandescent light. Or with any light, even. I would argue. That's really why neodymium, that's the whole point of it, is really to increase vibrancy and increase saturation of colors and make everything look more beautiful. And then eyes. We can talk about eyes and with the best lighting for, obviously, I would say incandescent, but a big benefit, these type of light bulbs have actually been recommended since the 80s. There's something called, I can't think of it right now, it's in New York City, for low vision patients, basically. Anyone that can't see, whether they're, partially blind, fully blind. These light bulbs help people with low vision to see better.
Okay.
So on near field, visual acuity test. So the test that when you go to the eye doctor, they have you cover one eye and then look at the board and say, can you read the letters? Right? You can actually, because of the thing on contrast and the effect on contrast, you can see a little bit better. So even if we don't have low vision, that's a huge, I don't think anyone would say, I don't want that in my life.
For sure.
That's a huge part.
Absolutely. So many people are experiencing vision problems nowadays too. And I think it's like, just as an aside, I've seen a lot of evidence in the scientific literature that even the frequencies from our devices and from wireless electricity can suppress melatonin and affect eyesight and damage our neurological health in a way that, of course, is can manifest for some people with vision disturbances and blurry vision. So it's vital, guys, to really not only plug yourself back into, the source of all life on this planet, the sun, and get those 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, but then also make some of these changes that we're discussing in your home and office with the Chromaluxe incandescent and halogen bulbs, and possibly even the light therapy pad if budget allows. If you really want to sleep better and combine that with unplug your Wi-Fi at minimum if you have Wi-Fi. Put your phone in airplane mode and get it outside the room, because those frequencies too, even though they're not visible, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that those frequencies themselves have an effect in much the same way that artificial light can suppress melatonin. They too can suppress melatonin and cause some of those downstream unwanted biological effects on our capacity to sleep and regenerate and feel like our brain is performing the way that it was designed to perform.
Well said.
Okay, awesome. I feel like we're covering a lot, like the truth about blue light, some of these different light vitamins and healthy light hacks that people can integrate. Talia, are there any other important things? healthylighting.com is where you guys can go to pick this stuff up.
Health lighting.
Healthlighting.com. Discount code Biohacking Secrets for 15% off. But Talia, are there other things? Is there anything else that you really want to share and impart that is an important component of getting our lighting working for us rather than the other way around?
Yeah, I would say I really want listeners to kind of leave with a feeling of just a renewed sense of how does light fit into our everyday lives? How do we make it work for us? If we're biohackers, we're concerned about hydration, nutrition, movement, sleep. Light should be on there as well. And not just blue light. That's kind of common speak at this point, but it's not just blue light. Everything we spoke about today, how does light make you feel? That should be on your checklist every day. How is your light making you feel right now? Do you have enough light for the task at hand? I guess the just common example, when you walk into a space and sometimes you don't know what feels off. Have you ever had that? You walk into a space and something just feels completely off.
One of my earliest memories, I would go shopping with my mom. She loved this place called Marshall's that was kind of like a secondhand department store. And I remember I'd go into Marshall's and my skin looked weird under the lights. It was like those bright, fluorescent tubing lights. My skin looked weird. I actually remember crawling underneath some of the clothing racks and hiding because I was like, I hate the lights here. And I told my mom, I hate the lights at Marshall's. I was 6. You know what I mean? I had no idea what any of this meant, but I did know how that light was making me feel, and it didn't make me feel good.
And kids are so sensitive to everything.
Yeah.
Kids just kind of have this innate sense of what's going on in their environment. So yeah, it's really cool that you already knew that the lighting was off.
Yeah, for sure. But that is important to check in with yourself and how is the lighting in your home and office and the places that you spend a lot of time, the devices that you interact with. How is that making you feel? And we're not just talking about.
Is there enough?
And is there enough? Is there enough? Is there too much?
Is there enough? Yes, exactly. At night, is there too much? There probably shouldn't be enough. There shouldn't be so much.
Right.
But during the day, you need more. You need more. So that's really on my checklist. And I hope that it can be on everyone's checklist eventually. Put lighting on there. And I'm not just talking light therapy. I'm not just talking, again, the blue light in the evening, but remember lighting every single day and how it makes you feel, and choose accordingly. It's a tool.
Yeah.
Choose accordingly.
I love it. Talia, this has been fantastic. I've enjoyed our conversation very much. I think there's a lot of value here for our listeners. Guys, if you've gotten value from this conversation, share it up on social media, send it to your friends and family members and people you work with, and go to healthlighting.com and pick up some of these Chromaluxe halogen bulbs and the Chromaluxe incandescent bulbs and maybe even the light therapy pad and trick your house out. and your office, and of course plug into the sun as well in the morning. That's important. Even just for a few minutes, it makes a big difference to just sit in a chair and enjoy your coffee or whatever you drink in the morning and just look towards the sun. Let your eyes and skin absorb some of that, even if it's a little bit dark or a little bit overcast. Like, there's still massive benefits there, even if it's not like a bright and sunny day. Talia, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. This has been fantastic.
Awesome. Anthony, so glad to be here. Glad to have this conversation. And there's so much. So hopefully we can all take a little nugget from here.
Thank you.
Thank you.